Today we'd like to go over an industry analysis and a company transformation strategy put together by Jim Whalen, Greg Wilson, Kyle Zipp, and Angela Hood. The semiconductor industry is a collection of companies engaged in the design and/or fabrication of semiconductor devices. The industry formed around 1960 at the point that the fabrication of semiconductors became a viable business. It has since grown to be a $311 billion industry at the end of 2011. A notable company within the semiconductor industry is, of course, Intel. Intel was founded in 1968 and today supplies nearly all of the world's computing and communication industries with chips, boards, systems, and software products. Intel is now the world's largest manufacturer of semiconductors with 11 fabrication facilities, 6 assembly facilities, and testing facilities all over the world. Intel's manufacturing is 2 generations ahead of the competition, which gives Intel the advantage of building smaller, faster, more powerful, and lower power usage chips than their competitors. They also have available fabrication sites that enable them to build the chips in-house without having to depend on foundry suppliers. This enables Intel to utilize its existing manufacturing expertise in building microprocessors for mobile devices at a cheaper cost than competitors or new entrants. Given their strong position and the decline of their core competency, the PC and server chip market segments, we are proposing Intel adopt a transformation strategy that takes advantage of emerging markets in mobile products and the associated data center needs to accommodate these growing markets.
Clearly, while attempting to break into a somewhat new industry market segment for Intel, the company must find a way to carve out a niche for itself and establish a customer base when so many others are already out there mass producing these mobile chips. Because of this, we decided to focus on overseas target markets. Intel already has an established presence in China and India, and these 2 countries represent Intel's largest source of mobile revenue at this time. Clearly, we will continue to focus our presence and marketing in these areas moving forward. While we will continue our push in China and India, Intel's largest target market moving forward will be that in Africa. We believe this is still a somewhat untapped market, and if we move quickly, we can establish ourselves as the first mobile giant in this area. Africa is the world's 2nd most populous continent, with an estimated 1.2 billion by 2016. Our focus is going to be that primarily in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, where economies are currently thriving. 80% of the consumers in Africa currently connect to the internet first by phone and not PC, showing what a great target market this is. Also, 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa, with 60% of that population being under 24 years old. Intel already has 6 operational sites in Africa, and we believe this can help us to begin distribution and marketing almost immediately.
To enable Intel to move into the mobile market and cloud computing as a service will require changes into the customer relationship management system, enterprise resource planning, and supply chain management. Along with the cloud computing as a service, it's going to require Intel to build a data center to be able to support this. The types of changes Intel will need to make to their CRM system is marketing reports will need to be modified to include the new types of customers, along with tracking collaboration with these new customers, partner reports, customer insight reports, issue management, and expanding their web presence to be able to fully support the customers in the mobile and cloud computing space. The system will also need to keep track of all the customers that Intel supports and will support plus customers that Intel finds sales leads with interest in their new products. The ERP architecture will require a large number of changes due to the shift to the mobile products and minimal changes to support cloud computing services. Product designers will now need to spend more time on designing new mobile products with features that are in demand and features that are forward-looking. With the shift to reduce resources on PC products and moving to an increase in mobile products, planning will need to shift to planning in the increase in mobile processors Changes in the ERP system will need to be made to reassign inventory, material requirements, procurement of raw materials, managing sales orders, invoicing, accounts payable, and accounts receivable for the new customers. The supply chain management architecture will require large changes to support the shift to manufacturing more mobile processors. The shift will require that the MSIM system fully supports changes to demand planning, allocation management, supply network planning, master production available to promise, and backorder promising. The planning needs to be in support of a quick shift of resources and materials to the fabrication plants that will be retooled to support additional manufacturing of mobile processors. In the event of additional fabrication plants being built, new locations will need to be added to the system, and managing the movement of product through the manufacturing process from fabrication plants to the assembly test plants needs to be flawless. In addition to delay of supply of microprocessors for mobile devices will impact Intel's move into the mobile space due to the competition already in place. The introduction of cloud computing services requires minimal changes to the current systems. However, a data center will need to be built to support providing this type of service to Intel's new customers. Planning for demand in this space will also need to be determined from marketing reports and monitoring the usage of the data center, just to ensure that the data center does not exceed capacity requirements for the customers.
As the Intel Mobile and Communications Group continues to develop and sell innovative mobile communication semiconductors, its management of human capital becomes all the more critical. Intel must realize that investing in people is at least as important as investing in material capital. As Intel shifts its main focus from the PC client group to the architecture operating segment to increase its market share in the mobile market, it will need to transfer current foundry employees from one group to the other. Because the skill sets required to create PC chips do not differ drastically from those required to create mobile chips, the transfer of personnel should occur fairly easily. The costs associated with training of the transferred individuals will consist mostly of travel costs for trainers and trainees. We estimate the total additional need for mobile chip foundry workers will be approximately 3,000 FTE. In addition to foundry workers, Intel must address the need to expand its workforce as it relates to the mobile market along with cloud hosting services. Intel must continue to show it has the ability to attract talented and creative workers to ensure they will catch and eventually pass the competition, especially within the mobile market. Because Intel is playing catch-up in the mobile microprocessor market, we anticipate there will be increased payroll and benefit costs incurred as Intel attempts to attract the types of employees that have created economic value, allowing Intel to maintain its sustained competitive advantage within the marketplace. It is estimated that an additional 150 mobile chip engineers will be required over the next 3 years. Part of the additional costs are projected to be offset with the attrition of 75 of the current PC server chip engineers.
The total budget estimate for Intel's transformation plan is nearly $5 billion, the majority of which will need to be absorbed in the first 2 years. The $5 billion primarily consists of the large cost of converting 5 existing fabrication plants currently producing PC and laptop chips into mobility production plants. Although the price tag of $1 billion per plant may seem high, it's important to note the high cost necessary for a new entrant to enter this market. Considering the cost to build 5 new production plants exceeds $35 billion, it is a very difficult market to enter. But for Intel, a mere $5 billion investment seems like a bargain comparatively. The transition cost breakdown is outlined here. Year 1 will come close to $3 billion. Year 2, over $2 billion, but Year 3 is exceptionally lower at only $22 million. The cost-benefit analysis shows us that Year 1 will be very tough as it has the highest expense, but Intel will earn a mere $3 million in revenue. Year 2 is a bit more palatable with an expense of about $2 billion and revenues that nearly match. Year 3, Intel really begins to see the ROI with low expenses and high revenue from the new plant production sales. Net present value, or NPV, for Intel is calculated at $178.8 million, a positive number which means it is wise to proceed with the investment and our proposed transition plan for Intel. Also, the internal rate of return, or IRR, is 12%. This slide shows us the transformation rollout timeline in detail. There are three high-level categories separated by the infrastructure rollout, the human capital rollout, the software solution, CRM, ERP, and SCM rollout, and of course the associated revenue projections. You can see yearly cost by quarter and revenue by quarter, as well as the human capital investment needed to successfully staff these new plants. This view shows us very clearly how revenue from the newly converted plants won't be sufficient to cover the expenses in year 1. Years 2 and 3, of course, begin to show us true ROI. Measuring and marking milestones through the transformation will be important to ensure success. For example, there are 3 plant conversion phases that must be complete by Q3, Q6, and Q10 in order to be on target. Also, the human capital conversion must match these plant openings, so staff are trained and ready to be productive on day 1. And revenue milestones by quarter and year must be carefully watched to understand early if we are not going to hit the 10% growth target and the projected $6.6 billion in revenue. If these milestones are monitored throughout the transformation rollout, actions may be taken to mitigate missed targets before they are actually missed.
While undertaking this massive transformation, not only in production but also in company identity, strict timelines and milestones must be set and adhered to, ensuring the plan is staying on track and that the goals of the transformation design be met in a timely fashion. Converting 8 total facilities from PC laptop chips to mobile chip production and cloud server hosting services is a substantial undertaking and should not be attempted all at once to ensure strict oversight and progress. For this reason, the plan has been determined to roll out the conversion of the facilities beginning with 2 plants at a time. After 3 quarters and 9 months' time, these first plants should be completely converted, and at which time the second conversion phase will commence. Another 2 production plants in 9 more months' time. Phase 3 will be the only remaining production plant, which again will be scheduled for a 9-month conversion. The only remaining phase of the rollout plan will convert all 3 test facilities over at the same time, which will occur during the 2nd, 5th, and 7th quarters. And as these are not production facilities, we see this as very realistic to undertake all 3 conversions simultaneously, along with the other production plant conversions. During this project, progress will be measured from 3 strict standpoints: budget, schedule, and revenue, which we will discuss further now. As this is a phase project rollout, which will be tracked quarterly, quarters 1 through 12, budget will also be broken down and tracked quarterly as well. The high initial costs seen here in quarters 1 through 3 reflect the implementation of the new CRM, ERP, and SCM systems, as well as the phase 1 plant rollout. Overlap in project rollout dates in the 6th quarter account for the higher budget also seen in this quarter. Fluctuations in budget are inevitable, but anything greater than 10% over budget per quarter will be considered unacceptable. Keep in mind these figures also reflect all human capital and software costs as well. With the enormous budget reserved for this project, return on investment needs to be seen in a relatively short period of time for the organization to continue to be successful. The schedule and timelines have already taken into consideration several worst-case scenarios, and the 9-month, 3-quarter timeline rollouts for the facility conversions are hard deadlines for the organization, and any excuse for any facility not being ready for production by the end of their respective 3rd quarter rollouts will also be considered unacceptable. The go-live for the plant conversion is production facility 1 and 2 at the start of quarter 4, production facility 3 and 4 at the start of quarter 6, production facility 5 at the start of quarter 9, and test facilities 1, 2, and 3 respectively going live in quarters 2, 5, and 7. While progress will be assessed primarily from a conversion and budget perspective, Metrics and key performance indicators will be much more revenue driven, as a fast return on investment will be necessary for the company to gain and maintain a competitive advantage in this somewhat new and volatile industry. High-level goals have been set for the transformation plan to see a 10% increase in both the mobile chip production market and in the cloud server hosting services market by 2015, which is 3 years' time from the project kickoff. At this same point in time, all 8 of the production and test facilities should be converted and fully functioning and producing at a full capacity. As the conversion plan will take place in a phased rollout, the company will see production levels increasing over time, with the efficiency of the newly converted plants increasing incrementally as well. To measure this, lower level metrics have been set to measure revenues from the new strategy quarterly, increasing as the facilities are converted and increases in production are seen. As in quarters 1 through 3, no facilities will have been converted. Those quarters will not be realizing any increases in revenue from the new strategy and have since been left off the following chart. On the screen, you can see our projected revenue by quarter and segment, with quarters 4 through 12 listed. With this massive expenditure being put into the conversion of these plants, the organization feels these are somewhat modest and extremely attainable figures. These numbers reflect the expected 2015 10% increase in market share in both the mobility and cloud server hosting services industries. As of 2012, the Intel mobility market share was roughly 6%, so by 2015 the organization expects a greater than 16% total market share. With the cloud server hosting services industry being a new market segment for Intel, the organization expects a greater than 10% overall market share by 2015.
As we have shown, the transformation strategy Intel should follow includes moving more aggressively into the mobile semiconductor market along with cloud hosting services. By shifting its focus along with targeting emerging markets such as South Africa, Intel will be able to realize the revenues we have projected. While it will be difficult to move away from their core competency of manufacturing PC and server chips, Intel must begin to move quickly into the mobile and cloud hosting services markets to stay competitive for the long term. Intel must be willing to make the changes we have outlined, including changes to their CRM, ERP, and SCM systems, which necessitate adding a new data center. By leveraging its existing foundries, Intel will be able to enter these new markets and over time become industry leaders as they have done previously in the PC server markets. Our transformation plan is aggressive, with ROI needing to be recognized very quickly, following year 2, allowing Intel to keep pace with the competition. We are asking for $5 billion to fund our transformation plan, which we feel will position Intel to create a sustained competitive advantage for years to come.